In this video, we're going to be evaluating trig functions using our unit circle. So in our first example here, we have t equals 5 pi over 3. So if we know what the key point for 5 pi over 3 on the unit circle is, then we can get through this pretty easy. But if we're not sure what that is, we can look at our unit circle and find that key point. Here we have a unit circle. So if we find 5 pi over 3, we can see that 5 pi over 3 is at 300 degrees, or at 1/2, comma, negative radical 3 over 2. So our key point here is going to be 1/2 negative radical 3 over 2. So the sign of our t value, which is 5 pi over 3, is the y value because we're using our unit circle. So I can put negative radical 3 over 2. Cosine of t is our x value, so 1/2. The tangent of t is the y value divided by the x value. So here we can keep, change, flip. The 2's are going to cancel out, and that's going to give us a value of negative radical 3 for our tangent. To find our cosecant value, we're going to take the reciprocal of sine. So we're going to have 2 over negative radical 3. We're going to rationalize our denominator. And we're going to find that that's going to give us negative 2 radical 3 over 3 as our cosecant value. And then our secant value is the reciprocal of cosine, so 2 over 1, or 2. And then our cotangent is the reciprocal of our tangent. And so we can take our negative radical 3. Instead of putting it over 1, we can have 1 over negative radical 3. And then we can rationalize our denominator to give us a negative radical 3 over 3. And if you're doing this for a class, your teacher might want you to write it so that it's written cleanly like this without all of the work in between. And that's just something that you need to ask your teacher or know if that's what your teacher wants. Let's go ahead and take a look at part B. So here in part B, we are looking for negative 5 pi over 4. Now before, when we were doing 5 pi over 3, we were basically going from here to here. And so we were going in this positive direction to get there. But now for negative 5 pi over 4, although we are still starting in the same spot, 5 pi over 4, if we were going a positive way, we'd come all the way over here to 225. And that would give us this extra area here. So how do we find that if it's negative? So again, if we were coming over there. Sorry about that. Okay, so we would notice that we moved 1, 2, let's try that again, 1, 2 into the third quadrant, and we were the middle value in the third quadrant. So now we're going to go this other direction, 1, 2, third quadrant, and we want that middle value. And so we're going to be going from here all the way across over here to 135 degrees. Okay, all the way to 135 degrees positive, which is at our positive 3 pi over 4, which is technically a negative 5 pi over 4. And here we can see there are key points there are negative radical 2 over 2 and radical 2 over 2. Now we can find our 6 trig values, which are 6 functions. So we've got sine of t equals our y value, so radical 2 over 2. Our cosine of t is the x value, negative radical 2 over 2. Our tangent is going to be our y divided by our x. And so here, if we look at this, for this particular problem, if we actually stack it instead of writing it that way, we can see that our numerator and our denominators are the same, except for one's positive, one's negative. So we have, things are able to cancel each other out and leave us with a negative 1. As we look at our cosecant of t, we'll get 2 over radical 2. So we rationalize our denominator, and that gives us 2 radical 2 over 2. And again, our 2's cancel out, so we actually see here that our cosecant of t is going to be the number radical 2. As we look at secant of t, we have that same thing happening here as cosine. So we're going to be taking the reciprocal of that, and if we look at the reciprocal of that, it's actually really, really similar to our reciprocal that we use for cosecant, which we know came out to be a value of radical 2. So in this particular instance, we're still going to have that value, but instead of it being positive, it's going to be negative because we had a negative value right here. So it kind of saves us a little bit of work. And then lastly, our cotangent. So if I'm taking the reciprocal, I'm essentially taking the negative radical 2 over 2 and dividing that by radical 2 over 2, which is the same thing that happened for our tangent. And we're just going to end up again with a negative 1 for that cotangent. So we can see that and realize that, hey, we've got some work that we can save ourselves. And so that is how you find and evaluate the 6 trig functions of a real number on the unit circle. It's highly suggested that if you haven't, that you memorize all of these essential points on the unit circle and what they correspond to with as degrees and also in radians, because it will make doing the problems that much faster because you don't have to look it up on the unit circle.